In the middle of a cost of living crisis tightening its grip on households across the UK, the one thing that should have been the safest is the very bottle of water you buy every day. Several healthy waters on the shelves of Tesco, Asda, and Sainsbury's have previously been banned from advertising by the ASA, urgently recalled, or even investigated for how they treat their water before bottling. In this video, I'm going to break down 10 bottled water brands in the UK that you may want to think twice about before spending your money, placing their glossy promises right next to recalls, ASA rulings, and the microplastics data behind the scenes. By the end, you may never look at that healthy bottle in your fridge the same way again. And we'll start with the option that seems completely harmless, when a simple, just a touch of fruit quietly eats up most of your daily sugar allowance. 10. Volvic touch of fruit. Picture this. You're in Tesco or Sainsbury's, standing in front of that endless wall of drinks. You want something lighter than fizzy pop, something that won't make you feel guilty packing it into a school lunchbox. Your hand reaches for Volvic touch of fruit. Clear bottle, pretty fruit on the label, words like natural flavor, low calories, refreshing fruit taste. Everything about it whispers, relax. It's just water with a tiny bit of fun. For a lot of families in the UK, this has become the compromise bottle. Not cola, not juice, just flavored water. It feels like the safe middle ground, the thing you buy when you're trying to be sensible but don't want your kids to roll their eyes at plain tap water. But then you turn the bottle around and actually read the small print. A 500 milliliter bottle of the summer fruits flavor has around 11 to 12 grams of sugar. That is close to 40% of the maximum daily free sugar an adult is supposed to have under NHS guidance in one light drink. That's not a touch of anything. That's a hefty chunk of your sugar budget dressed up as water. And it doesn't stop at sugar. Studies on flavored waters have found that some of them are acidic enough to wear down tooth enamel, almost like orange juice, especially if you sip them slowly throughout the day. So the drink you thought was a gentle way to stay hydrated is quietly hitting both your blood sugar and your teeth at the same time. What really makes this worse is the way it plays with expectations. The branding leans on low sugar and a clean, healthy look, but you're still getting free sugars poured into the bottle. It goes straight for parents who just want something nicer than tap water, but not as bad as soda for their kids. You think you've outsmarted fizzy drinks, and then your dentist tells you your healthy water behaves suspiciously like a dessert. Meanwhile, you're at home carefully cutting back on biscuits, checking cereal boxes, trying to do the right thing, and every multi-pack of Volvic touch of fruit is another quiet river of sugar running into lunchboxes and after-school snacks. It makes every drinks aisle feel like a gamble. You want to keep your kids safe, but every label reads like a riddle. When I see this bottle now, I don't see just water with a hint of fruit. I see sugar, acid, and clever marketing sitting where plain water should be. If you're fighting to cut down on sugar, this is not the bottle you want to be sipping all day. And the funny thing is, at least with Volvic, you are paying for flavor. With number 9, a lot of people are paying mainly for tap water in disguise. 9. Tesco and Asda, cheap still water. You're in the drinks aisle at Tesco, staring down a wall of bottles and price tags, trying to make your money stretch. The branded mineral waters are creeping towards £1 a bottle. The fancy imported stuff is even worse. And then your eye lands on the value option. Tesco Everyday Value Still Water or Asda Smart Price Still Water. 17 pence for 2 litres. White label, supermarket logo, big friendly words, still water. It looks harmless. It looks honest. It looks like the sensible choice for anyone counting every penny in the middle of a cost of living crisis. You see it sitting on the same shelf as spring water and mineral water, and you think, it's cheap, it's their own brand, it must be a decent deal. Then comes the part most people never see, because they never think to ask. When journalists and consumer groups started digging, they found out these value still waters are not from some special spring at all. They're mains water, tap water, that's been filtered and bottled. Sometimes the company will even admit the source: Yorkshire Water, Thames Water. In terms of basic safety, that's fine. UK tap water is tightly regulated. The twist is the bill. 2 litres of tap water from your kitchen costs around 1/3 of a penny. The exact same volume in a supermarket value bottle, 17 pence. You're paying a markup of more than 2,000% for something you already pay for on your water bill. What makes this worse is the way it's presented. Clear plastic bottle, blue or green label, lines of still, table, pure, water all jumbled together. Nowhere on the front does it shout, "This is just filtered tap water." The context does the work. You see rows of bottled water. You assume they are all fundamentally different products. But this isn't some special natural source. It's tap water plus plastic, transport and profit, quietly masquerading as a separate thing. In other words, you're renting your own tap water by the bottle. And here's the part that really stings. You already pay council tax, rent, or a mortgage, soaring gas and electricity, and a standing charge just to have safe tap water in your home. Now on top of that, you're asked to pay the supermarket again to hand it back to you in a disposable bottle. For some families, that 17p feels harmless, but multiply it by every school lunch, every train journey, every emergency top-up at the corner shop, every time you forgot a reusable bottle, and you realize how much you're bleeding drip by drip for something that literally comes out of your kitchen tap. It also leaves a nasty question hanging in the air. If they're this quiet about the source, how much faith do you really have in how carefully every bottle is stored, handled, and shipped? When I see these cheap bottles now, I don't see a bargain. I see a receipt for money I didn't need to spend. If you need bottled water in an emergency, fine. But as a daily habit, this is one of the most expensive ways to buy something you already own. And if you think that's bad, number 8 goes one step further, selling filtered water back to you with a name that sounds almost artificially intelligent. 8. Glacéo Smart Water. Picture a busy weekday morning in a London gym or a Pret near the station. You've just done a workout, or you're grabbing a quick lunch between shifts. On the chilled shelf, right next to the kombucha, protein shakes and healthy smoothies, sits Glacéo Smart Water. The bottle looks almost clinical. Slim, clear, minimalist label, lowercase font. Words like vapor distilled and electrolytes added for taste jump out at you. It feels clever, sleek, almost futuristic. This isn't just water, the packaging suggests. This is an upgrade. It's water, but make it Silicon Valley. Then you scratch beneath the buzzwords. Smart water in the UK is, at its core, spring water or mains water that's been turned into vapor, condensed back into liquid, essentially distilled, and then had minerals added back in, so it doesn't taste flat. When you strip away the marketing, what you're left with is filtered water in a bottle. There's no solid evidence it hydrates you better than clean tap water at home run through a decent filter. Your body doesn't care how fancy the label is, and that shiny, smart image has already shown cracks. In the UK, the brand's claim about 100% recycled plastic bottles has been challenged because while the main bottle can be made from recycled plastic, the caps and labels are not, and regulators were asked to look at whether that phrase could mislead people into thinking the whole product was magically impact-free. For a lot of consumers who are trying to do the right thing for the planet, that feels like the first red flag. What makes this worse is the mix of price and moral illusion. You're paying noticeably more for smart water than you would for filling a reusable bottle from the tap, partly because you've been nudged to believe two comforting stories at once: that the water is somehow purer than what already comes out of your kitchen, and that the bottle itself is kinder to the planet. In reality, it's still single-use plastic, and the water inside doesn't give you any special health advantage. You're not just paying for clean water, you're paying to feel like a good person in a plastic bottle aisle. In a cost-of-living crisis, with energy bills up and climate anxiety in the background, that kind of guilt marketing hits hard. You start to feel that if you don't choose the 100% recycled option, you're failing, even if the wording isn't telling the full story. When I see smart water now, I don't see intelligence. I see a simple product wrapped in a very sophisticated pitch. If you love the taste, drink it occasionally. But don't fool yourself into thinking this is the only smart way to stay hydrated. And if smart water is the filtered water in a suit version of this trick, number 7 is the vitamin-coated sequel to the same game. 7. Glacéo, vitamin water. You've seen it 1,000 times. A fridge in a corner shop, a railway station kiosk, the lobby of an office block. Rows of Glacéo vitamin water in every color of the rainbow. Bright labels, cute names, promises like energy, focus, defense splashed across the front. It doesn't look like a soft drink. It looks like something from the wellness aisle that just wandered into the drinks fridge by accident. It looks like your multivitamin got liquefied and put in a trendy bottle. And that's exactly why so many people reach for it instead of a regular fizzy drink. You tell yourself you're making the smarter choice. You're not grabbing cola, you're grabbing vitamin water. It feels like a health upgrade in plastic form, something you can sip on the train or at your desk without that little voice in your head nagging you about sugar. But the label on the back tells a very different story. A 500 milliliter bottle of vitamin water typically contains over 20 grams of sugar, many flavors around 23 grams. That's roughly 70 to 80% of the maximum daily free sugar an adult is supposed to have under NHS guidelines in one better-for-you drink. This isn't just a hint of sweetness, it's a serious hit, and regulators have noticed. The ASA has already stepped in to ban ads that suggested vitamin water was nutritious and good for you, because you simply can't slap that word on a product that behaves like a sugar-sweetened soft drink and expect nobody to notice forever. What makes this worse is who the product is aimed at. It's not chasing hardcore soda fans. It's aimed squarely at the people trying to clean up their diet. The office worker who's quit cola, the gym goer who wants something functional, the parent who feels less guilty handing over a bottle with vitamin and defense on the front. You swapped your fizzy drink for something that literally brands itself as vitamin, and somehow you still drank most of your sugar budget for the day. That's not just disappointing. It feels like a slap in the face, and behind that slap is fear. We've been told again and again by the NHS, Diabetes UK, and countless studies that sugary drinks are a major driver of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. So when someone drinks vitamin water every day to be healthier, they're walking straight back into the danger zone they were trying so hard to escape. For many people, this isn't just bad marketing. It's a direct hit on their trust and on their blood sugar. If you really need vitamins, get them from real food or from an actual supplement that's honest about what it is. Don't let a sugary drink pretend it's doing you a favor while it quietly racks up your daily sugar total. At least with vitamin water, you can taste the sweetness. The next brand is more dangerous in a different way. There's nothing special about the taste at all, just a heritage story that's been pumped up far beyond reality. 6. Harrogate Spring Water. There's a bottle of Harrogate Spring Water in the middle, tall, elegant, maybe even in glass. The label leans hard on its story. British heritage water from a famous spa town, bottled at source since 1571. It doesn't just look clean, it looks respectable, historic, the kind of bottle you assume is automatically safer than whatever comes out of the tap at home. For a lot of people, Harrogate lives in that mental box marked, "Don't worry about it, it's proper English spring water." But then you find out that even this proper image has already been challenged. The advertising regulator, ASA, had to step in over the way since 1571 was used because it gave people the impression the brand itself had existed since 1571, when that date actually referred to when the original wells were first discovered. ASA told them to change the wording to avoid misleading people, and concerns about the bottled at source claim were passed to trading standards. That's the first tiny crack in the honest traditional facade. The moment you realize even the heritage line has been polished a little too hard. Then comes the part hardly anyone at that restaurant table has heard about. Harrogate Spring Water was at one point the subject of a criminal investigation by North Yorkshire authorities over food safety and hygiene issues at the bottling plant. In the end, the council decided not to proceed with a prosecution, but the fact remains. A brand held up as a benchmark for purity was serious enough to be looked at under criminal food safety laws. When your pure British heritage water gets caught up in a criminal food safety investigation, that cozy since 1571 slogan suddenly feels very different. What makes this worse is what's been happening outside the factory walls. Plans to expand the bottling operation onto Rotary Wood, a community woodland planted with thousands of trees, sparked anger from local residents and conservation groups who saw it as cutting down a living carbon sink to produce yet more single-use plastic bottles. In a country where people are already torn between protecting their wallets and protecting the environment, the idea of a premium brand growing by taking away trees near where they live leaves a very bitter aftertaste. So you go back to that bottle on the polished table and it doesn't look quite so harmless anymore. You picked Harrogate because it felt local, historic, somehow cleaner and safer than tap water. Now you're left wondering, am I really buying something pure or just paying extra for a very old story and a lot of clever positioning? Heritage doesn't automatically mean safety, especially when regulators have already had to step in. And if even a historic English name has a history like that. Number 5. Scotland's favourite water, comes with a shock of its own, including bottles that have quite literally exploded in people's hands. 5. Highland Spring. You've probably seen Highland Spring everywhere, on a picnic rug in a park, lined up in office meeting rooms, tucked into school-packed lunches. This is the bottle that looks like the safe, middle-class choice. Rolling Scottish hills on the label, that calm purple branding from organic land, and the proud slogan, Scotland's favourite water. It sits there on the table saying, I'm boring in the best possible way. I'm safe. I'm neutral. I'm the last thing you need to worry about. But even the safe option has a story. Not that long ago, Highland Spring had to recall certain glass bottles of its 750-milliliter sparkling water after warnings that some of them could crack, shatter, or even explode because of a manufacturing fault. Retailers and the brand itself had to tell customers not to drink from the affected bottles, to handle them carefully, to treat a simple drink of water like a fragile hazard. Suddenly, the risk wasn't about what was inside the bottle. It was the bottle itself, the one thing you never question. And that wasn't the only time their image of calm Scottish purity has been challenged. The ASA also stepped in over a Highland Spring promotion that shouted 10,000 instant prizes, when in reality the mechanics were based on winning moments and far more complicated small print than the front of the pack suggested. Once again, the surface message was simple and friendly, but the truth underneath was not quite as generous as people were led to believe. What makes this worse is the contrast between the brand's personality and what actually happened. Everything about Highland Spring is designed to feel steady, gentle, almost soothing. It's the bottle you hand to your child or your elderly parent without a second thought. Then you find out that for some customers, the official advice was effectively, don't drink it, don't grip it too tightly, and be careful when you throw it away. The last thing you ever expect your bottled water to do is explode before you even open it. For consumers already stressed about food prices, energy bills, and rent, the ask is simple. Just give us products that don't add more drama. When even the normal organic supermarket staple option has had to be pulled back from the shelves because of a risk of physical injury, it starts to feel like there's no truly safe corner in the drinks aisle at all. To be fair, the recall was handled, but it's a reminder that even the most ordinary-looking bottle can come with surprises you never signed up for. It makes you think twice about blind trust and a lot more interested in sturdy reusables and a good home filter. And if that's how things look for Scotland's favourite water, number 4 is the global version of the same nightmare, when a giant water company is accused of secretly filtering natural mineral water to hide what's really in the source. 4. Perrier and Contrex. Picture: a Friday night in a nice restaurant. The lights are low, the bill is definitely not cheap, and at the bar, the bartender is pouring Perrier into a cocktail glass. That iconic green bottle, bubbles catching the light, the whole thing dripping with French chic. This is the kind of water people order when they want to treat themselves. Imported, sparkling, labelled as natural mineral water from France. Contrex plays a similar game in the health aisle. Pink and white branding, talk of minerals for bones and slimming. The label reading almost like a supplement. These are not just drinks, they're sold as upgrades for your body. Then you hear about what's been happening behind the scenes. In France, investigations have accused Nestlé Waters of using unauthorized filtration systems on so-called natural mineral waters. treatments designed to deal with bacteria or pesticide residues before bottling, while still keeping the natural mineral water label on the front. Prosecutors opened a criminal inquiry, and courts have had to ask an awkward question. If your water has been pushed through extra filters to fix contamination, is it still honest to sell it as natural mineral water? That's not a small technicality. That's a direct punch to the word natural, printed in huge letters on the bottle. And the ghosts don't stop there. Perrier already has a very public skeleton in its cupboard, the benzene recall of the 1990s, when hundreds of millions of bottles were pulled from shelves worldwide after a carcinogenic chemical was found at levels regulators said were unacceptable. It's old history, but it never really dies. Every time a story breaks about Perrier, that recall gets dragged back into the headlines like a stain that won't wash out. What makes this worse isn't just the idea that the water might, at some point, have been risky. It's the fact that people pay extra precisely because they believe they are getting something untouched, pristine, straight from a protected underground source. If a brand has to secretly lean on complex filtration to clean up problems, and then continues to lean on the word natural, as if nothing happened, that feels like a slap in the face. If your natural water has to go through more treatment than the average tap, how natural does it really feel? For a lot of people in the UK, this is the water they order in restaurants at a huge markup, thinking they're choosing something better for the body. Hearing about criminal investigations, unauthorized filters, and a historical benzene scandal doesn't just make you worry about what you've been drinking. It makes you feel talked down to. You didn't just charge me more, you sold me a fantasy. At the end of the day, a fancy green bottle and a French postcode don't guarantee what's behind the label. That's exactly why more people are quietly going back to a good home filter, a solid, reusable bottle, and a lot more questions before they pay premium prices for a story. But if this is a tale of natural that suddenly doesn't look so natural, number 3 hits an even more common nerve: microplastics, and a brand that has topped a league table no one wants to be number 1 in. 3. Nestlé Pure Life. Imagine a small flat in London or Birmingham. A South Asian or Middle Eastern family has just done the weekly shop. On the kitchen counter, there's a multi-pack of Nestlé Pure Life, blue label, smiling family, the words Pure Life wrapped around the bottle like a promise. For many immigrants, this isn't just any brand. It's a familiar logo from back home, something that feels safe in a country where a lot of other things still feel uncertain. This is the bottle that promises life and purity in the same sentence. Now put that picture next to what researchers actually found. A global study tested hundreds of bottles of water from big-name brands around the world, and Nestlé Pure Life ranked among those with the highest levels of microplastics per liter. Tiny fragments, sometimes dozens, sometimes hundreds, in a single bottle. The World Health Organization has said there isn't enough evidence yet to link these particles to specific diseases in humans. But the study also pointed to where most of the plastic was coming from: the PET bottle and the cap itself. In other words, the packaging that's supposed to protect the water is quietly breaking into the very thing you're drinking. And Nestlé Pure Life, for all its purity branding, is essentially heavily treated water that has had minerals added back in. Not so different, in principle, from tap water that's been run through a good filter. What makes this worse is the way the story on the label clashes with the story in the lab. Pure Life sounds like a clean slate for your body. a way of opting out of whatever might be lurking in local pipes. But no one is putting a warning on the front saying, by the way, purity here does not mean plastic-free. Families buy this because they think they are stepping up, not sideways, especially when they've already heard Nestlé criticized again and again for aggressive groundwater extraction in other countries. Once you know that history, the word pure, starts to feel less like a promise and more like a sales pitch. The emotional punch lands hardest on parents and carers. For many of them, this bottle feels safer than the tap. It's what they give to toddlers, grandparents, anyone they're worried about. So the idea that you might be swapping chlorine for microscopic plastic flakes is not exactly comforting. You're trying to protect your family from one risk, and without realizing it, you may be introducing another you never even agreed to. If you live in a part of the UK with safe tap water and you can afford a decent home filter, you may not need to pay extra to turn plastic into part of your daily hydration routine. Sometimes, the most protective choice isn't the global brand with a big blue promise, it's the glass jug in your own fridge. And if a name like Pure Life can be tangled up with microplastics, number 2 shows that even Evian from the Alps isn't immune to lawsuits over plastic and accusations of greenwashing. 2. Evian. Picture a young professional in London on their lunch break. Yoga mat rolled up under one arm, salad box in one hand, MacBook in the backpack, and in the other, a cold bottle of Evian. It's almost part of the outfit. Evian is not just water, it's an accessory. The label leans hard on the fantasy. Natural mineral water from the French Alps, soft pink and white branding, snow-capped mountains, and now all the language about being sustainable, carbon neutral, conscious. It doesn't just promise hydration, it promises that you're the kind of person who makes good choices for your body and for the planet. Then you start reading about what's been happening in courtrooms. In the US and Canada, class actions have gone after Evian and its parent company Danone, accusing them of misleading consumers by pushing the words natural and pure, while bottled water, including Evian, has been found to contain microplastics, just like so many other brands in global studies. Judges in some cases have thrown the lawsuits out because the law around microplastics is still fuzzy. But the very fact that Evian from the Alps has had to defend itself in court over what pure really means puts a big question mark over that pristine image. The next layer of discomfort comes with the carbon neutral badge. Environmental groups and consumer advocates have criticized the way Evian plasters carbon neutral on its bottles, arguing that the phrase makes ordinary shoppers think the whole process, production, bottling, shipping across continents, somehow leaves no footprint at all. In reality, those claims usually rely on complex offset schemes that most of us will never fully see or understand. Even when legal challenges have been dismissed, the whiff of greenwashing lingers. People start to wonder where honest sustainability ends and marketing theater begins. What makes this worse is the gap between the lifestyle fantasy and the basic reality. In a cost of living crisis, someone might still treat themselves to Evian because it feels like the safer, cleaner, more ethical option. They're paying hundreds of times more than tap water for something that is still single-use plastic, still potentially laced with microscopic plastic fragments, and still at the center of arguments about how far you can stretch words like pure and carbon neutral before they snap. You're not just paying for water, you're paying to feel like a better person, and that feeling is exactly what the marketing department is billing you for. For a lot of viewers, this is the moment the penny drops. Maybe you don't need a designer bottle to drink safely. A decent home filter, a solid reusable flask, and honest tap water start to look a lot less boring and a lot more sane. If you like the taste of Evian, that's your call. But don't let a snow-capped mountain on a label convince you it's the only clean water option you've got. All of these stories still haven't touched the biggest bottled water scandal ever to hit the UK. Number 1 is the brand that turned Sidcup tap water into a national disaster. 1. Dasani. If this countdown had a movie trailer, this is where it would start. The year is 2004. Coca-Cola launches Dasani into the UK with the confidence of a blockbuster premiere. Billboards, glossy ads, press events, all pushing the line that this is water as pure as bottled water gets. They talk about high-tech purification, multiple filtration stages, almost hinting at NASA-level technology. The bottle is a clean blue, the logo crisp, the target clear. Young people, office workers, anyone who might be persuaded that tap water in a branded bottle is suddenly aspirational. Within weeks, Dasani sounds like the next big thing. Then comes the first plot twist, and it's brutal. Investigative journalists dig into the source and discover that Dasani in the UK isn't from some pristine mountain spring at all. It's tap water, specifically mains water from the treatment works in Sidcup, supplied by Thames Water. Coca-Cola was taking regular UK tap water, running it through their own filters, bottling it, and selling it back to people for a markup that made bottled water more expensive than petrol. The press had a field day, dubbing it a real-life Peckham Spring moment, straight out of Only Fools and Horses. The mood in the country flipped from mild curiosity to a kind of national eye roll. So we've been paying premium prices for Sidcup in disguise. But the real hammer blow was still to come. Just as the tap water scandal was peaking, safety tests revealed that some batches of Dasani contained bromate, a chemical linked to an increased cancer risk at levels above the UK legal limit for drinking water. Overnight, roughly 500,000 bottles had to be recalled. The Food Standards Agency stressed there was no need for mass panic, but also made it clear that water with that concentration of bromate simply wasn't allowed on the market. For ordinary people, the story wrote itself. First, we were sold tap water. Then we were sold tap water that wasn't even safe by the country's own standards. What makes this worse is how perfectly it sums up everything that can go wrong with bottled water in one case study. Take tap water, wrap it in language about purity and advanced technology, slap on a massive markup, fail to control your treatment process properly, let a banned level of a harmful chemical slip through, and watch an entire brand collapse under the weight of its own marketing. Dasani vanished from UK shelves, but the scar it left on public trust never really did. It's the reason that even now, every time we pick up a premium bottle, there's a tiny voice asking, is this just another Sidcup waiting to happen? In a cost of living crisis, that question hits harder than ever. When you're counting every pound, the last thing you need is to pay luxury prices for tap water and drama. Dasani is gone. The mindset that created it, that's still very much alive. And it's exactly why we have to read the label, know our options, and remember that a good tap, a solid filter, and a reusable bottle are sometimes the most powerful consumer protection we've got. After the Dasani story, it's tempting to swear off bottled water forever. But in real life, most of us will still end up buying a bottle at some point, on the motorway, at a station, in a restaurant. So the real question is, how do you choose safer bottled water without paying for fear and fantasy? First, if you live in a part of the UK with safe tap water, your baseline should be your tap plus a decent home filter and a solid reusable bottle. That simple combo cuts most of the plastic, most of the drama, and most of the cost. Bottled water should be the exception, not your daily habit. When you do need bottled water, go for bottles that are boring in the best possible way. Plain still or sparkling. No flavor, no sugar, no vitamin. Smart. Defense. Look for British natural mineral water or spring water with a clearly named UK source. In restaurants, that might mean choosing something like Bellew in glass, a recognized British natural mineral water from Wales, run as a social enterprise that puts its profits into clean water projects instead of just selling you a lifestyle. On the supermarket shelf, a local Welsh brand like Brecon Carreg, a natural mineral water bottled in a national park and praised by ethical guides for its environmental commitments, makes more sense than flying in water from the Alps just for a logo. And if you're on a tight budget, there's nothing wrong with supermarket own-label British natural mineral waters such as Tesco's Ashbeck from Cumbria, bottled at source, subject to strict mineral water rules, with a very boring label that talks about the spring, not about superpowers. None of these options are perfect. Almost all bottled water today contains some level of microplastics, and they all create waste. But if you keep tap plus filter as your default, save bottled water for when you genuinely need it, and stick to simple, local, clearly labeled brands like these, you're far less likely to pay luxury prices for the next Sid Cup in disguise. So in the end, this isn't really a story about bottled water. It's a story about trust, price tags, and how easy it is to sell us comfort with a nice logo and a mountain on the label. If there's one thing to take away from Dasani, Evian, Pure Life, and the rest, it's this: pure, natural, and carbon neutral are just words until you ask what's actually in the bottle and how it got there. In a cost of living crisis, every pound you spend should be buying real safety, not just a feeling. So tell me in the comments, which brand are you drinking every day, and do you still trust it after this? And if you want us to investigate another label, you know what to do.